Drew, is it true that you are telling people not to buy our new iPad? Well, yeah, Tim, when you just don't change very much year over year, and iPadOS is still the main problem, it's just too easy to recommend buying refurbished and cheaper iPads from years prior. Well, would your mind change if we added macOS to the iPad? Oh my god, yes. Are you actually gonna do that? No. But I do need to speak to Craig. Oh, right, because he's, taking over as CEO in a couple months? No, that would be John Turnus, but, I still need to have a talk with Craig. It's because you're adding macOS, isn't it? I am not. I don't want to hear you say that again, okay? An iPad is an iPad. Yeah, but that's why you added the function keys with the escape buttons, so now we have button symmetry between the Macs and the iPad and everything. Drew, I am serious. You have to stop speaking like that because I need to go figure out right now if, boot camp works on the M4. Yep, once again, I don't care if you're in love with iPads, and I'm not trying to talk you out of buying an iPad today. Although, yeah, your phone can probably do a lot of the same things, and a MacBook is far more capable, probably more affordable when you consider the size of the display, and the keyboard, and the battery life, and the additional ports and all that. But no, we're not going there today. We're just assuming that you guys are in the market for an iPad, you need one, no questions asked. Well, even in that particular scenario, I cannot recommend really any of you to go on Apple's own website or to go to their store and just pick up an iPad brand new out of the box, okay? Because year over year, there's just so few actual changes, and there's so many features that Apple just leaves out, particularly in their mid-range and budget iPad department, that it makes previous generation iPads that are not front and center on the website so much better value. And I'm linking you to those in today's videos, and from the beginning, there's no Amazon affiliate links. I'm not sponsored in any way. This is just a recommendation, like you're just a bunch of friends out there, and I'm telling you what I think you should and shouldn't consider. So let's start on the low end, because we all know that most people aren't dropping thousands of dollars on their iPads. The market share of iPad sales is probably like 70% budget iPad, 20% iPad Air, and then iPad Pro is like the last little 10% of people that have more money than sense. In the tech community, I'm sure it's very different, but at least on this new budget end, I was happy to see Apple now pricing the iPad 10 at $350. That's of course far more reasonable and doable than before at $450, which was crazy for an iPad that doesn't have a laminated display. However, I should mention that if you're insistent on buying that specific iPad 10, then okay, it's still on Amazon for a little bit cheaper. If you're buying that iPad to save money, why not continue on that trend of trying to save money? And by the way, that's brand spanking new. If you're willing to go refurbished or used, you can find the iPad 10 now for even less than that because Apple has lowered the price, which of course affects the resale value for the whole market. But I also would consider, if you would like to stay within that $400 price bracket, the possibility of buying an iPad Air 4. In fact, you can buy them from Apple Certified Refurbished, which is basically brand new. They replace the accessories, they replace the outer shell, they usually replace the battery. So when you buy from Apple Certified Refurbished, I have, many of my friends have, it's practically like brand new. It still comes with an Apple warranty and everything. You won't be able to tell that it was used by anybody else. And you can buy the iPad Air 4, which has the same starting storage configuration as the iPad 10. It has the same A14 chip on the inside, so there's no debate here about whether or not it has the newer silicon or not. No, the iPad Air 4 straight up just has a faster USB-C port, so data transfers are quicker. It also has a laminated display, so the display feels a lot closer to the glass and what you're touching and interacting with. Plus, the iPad Air 4 is actually compatible with the Apple Pencil 2, which you can also buy refurbished from Apple if you want for a discount. It magnetically attaches to the side, which is really great and handy. And really, in my opinion, the only advantage of going with the iPad 10 over the Air 4 is if you want the centrally positioned webcam. If that's a really important feature to you, then I guess go ahead with the iPad 10. If you care about repairability as well, the non-laminated display is supposed to be a bit cheaper and easier to fix. So if you plan on breaking your iPad display, I guess the 10 might be a little bit cheaper to service. But for a lot of people out there, I still think the iPad Air 4 4 is the better choice for about the same price, same storage, same silicon on the inside. And a lot of people are still upset that those entry-level iPads don't have laminated displays. And my biggest complaint with that iPad 10, of course, was the Apple Pencil setup. You either had to use a Lightning pencil, despite the iPad 10 not having a Lightning port, crazy adapters and cables, and then later they kind of fixed it with the USB-C Apple Pencil, but that one doesn't have pressure sensitivity, and you still have to use a cable to charge it, opposed to the vastly superior Apple Pencil 2, which just magnetically attaches to the side, and you get that with the iPad Air 4. So worth considering if you're in that $400 price bracket. But if we move our way up a little bit to the lineup, I think these are probably the more disappointing iPads in the lineup. The iPad Air M2, which now comes in two sizes, 12.9 inches and 11 inches, even though it didn't change much from the previous generation, it's still the exact same size. Because Apple did not bring Face ID to the iPad Air, and both of them are still LCD panels, both of them are still 60 Hertz, it's kind of difficult to justify those when the iPad Pros have had these features for literally years now. The iPad Pro got Face ID in 2018, which was 6 years ago, guys. For 6 years, they've had these basic biometric features. In my opinion, Face ID in the iPad is way better than Touch ID. Some of you may disagree with me, but less people will disagree with me on the Pro Motion displays, which have been in the iPad for 7 years. Yes, my wife's 2017 iPad Pro had Pro Motion, and yet these brand spanking new M2 iPad Airs still don't, despite costing about the same price as what we paid for that iPad Pro way back in 2017. So because of that, you can find refurbished iPad Pros from Apple that have the mini LED display, that have the M1 chip, which is practically the same in an iPad as an M2 chip, and they'll have a Thunderbolt port, so faster data connections, faster transfer speeds if you're using that port, and of course the Pro Motion high refresh rate display and Face ID. You can find all of that with double the storage, okay, 256 gigs, for only $30 more than the iPad Air 12.9 inch variant. So you double the refresh rate, you double the storage, you get Face ID instead of Touch ID, you get a higher dynamic range display, and you double the transfer speed of the USB-C port. All of that for $30? I feel like if you're dropping $800 on an iPad, that little bit of a splurge is worth it. In fact, if you're willing to stick with 128 gigs, we actually saw some of those 12.9 inch M1 iPad Pros going for less money than the iPad Air. So storage capacity matched, the iPad Pros actually had all of those advantages and were cheaper than the new iPad Air. The only downside slash up reason to go with the iPad Air is, again, if you want that centrally mounted webcam on the longer side, which, by the way, is not even perfectly in the center anymore, so why get so picky anyway? Or reason number two, and you're gonna find this comes up a lot in today's video, if you really, really, really love that Apple Pencil Pro. Yes, I will admit that gyro and haptic feedback with Find My support is pretty handy, but unfortunately there's no way to get that Pro Pencil working with any older iPads. But if you were happy and content with the Apple Pencil 2, that will still work really, really great. And in my opinion, especially if we're talking about an iPad Air, if you're drawing and wanting an immersive experience, you might care a bit more about having a buttery smooth Pro Motion display, which you can find on the refurbished iPad Pros, both on Amazon and Apple certified refurbished. And of course, you could save yourself a lot of money by buying those older iPads with the Apple Pencil 2, which has been out for a while, so you can buy them used and refurbished for cheaper, opposed to the Apple Pencil Pro, which means buying a whole new iPad, which is going to be, like, especially with the Airs starting at $600 after taxes, and the Apple Pencil Pros in here, we're talking easily over $800 for your tablet experience, whereas I think we could easily keep it under $800 if you're willing to live with a little bit of older hardware. And because Apple changed so little with the iPad Air M2 variant, it's pretty easy to recommend you just go get a refurbished iPad Pro anyway, unless you really care about that hover feature, because they software locked that out of the M1 iPad Pros, I'm afraid. Although I have seen some discounts already on M2 iPad Pros on Amazon. Those will have the Apple Pencil hover features, but they only work with the Apple Pencil 2, not the Pencil Pro. But they will still have mini LED if you want to go with that bigger size. Just still, obviously, it's a $1,000 purchase instead of a $800 purchase. So it could be a little bit difficult to justify. And that brings us lastly to the newest iPads that everybody wants to talk about. Probably Apple's first foldable product, the M4 iPad Pros, with their OLED displays, the thinnest Apple products ever, not counting the polishing cloth and the Apple Card, and who knows, some other crap someone probably hasn't thought of yet. But yes, these fancy hardware iPad Pros, it's very difficult to say that, well, you can get by with the M2 iPad Pro or an older newer iPad Pro because there's a lot of features they packed into those high-end Pros that you just can't really find elsewhere in older iPads. Whether it be the OLED panel, the M4 chip, of course, is the newest of the new. It's not even in any Mac yet. So all I can really ask, instead of forwarding you to, oh, just buy last year's model, because last year's model is just straight up not going to have all of the features that Apple's boasting about with these new Pros, rocking OLED, the much higher typical brightness. It's just that make sure that if you're buying one of these new iPad Pros, it's for a specific feature that you really, really feel like you cannot live without. You have to really care and really need that Apple Pencil Pro gyro feature with Find My and Hover. Make sure that you're not just using an Apple Pencil and an iPad so you can do some brief basic journaling or note-taking, because that, of course, will work perfectly fine even on an iPad Air 4 from years ago, and you'll save yourself a ton of money that way, and the regular Apple Pencil will get the job done just fine. So if you're absolutely convinced that you need that thin, lightweight design, and you need that huge brightness, and you need those Apple Pencil Pro features, okay, well, I'm sorry, it's gonna put you back $1,300, $1,400. And if you're not in a rush, I would encourage you to wait, because sometimes we see deals trickle in not too long after launch. Especially on Amazon, they love selling things undercutting Apple. That's why so many people have been able to pick up the iPad Mini 6 for only $400 for so many years. So still, of course, no reason to buy it brand new from Apple at $500. So I struggle to understand why someone needs that much overkill hardware in their iPad. That's why I saved it for last, was to make sure that the only people watching this video and disagreeing with me and saying, no, Drew, you're wrong, I need that newer iPad, I need that newer chip. Okay, well, that's all right. I just want to make sure that you're aware of the reasons you need it. It's your money, it's your life, you can live it the way you want to, of course. I'm just trying to make sure that you're not going into it unaware of where a lot of the savings are, and especially in the case of checking out the new iPad Airs, that you're aware of what features for the same amount of money or less you're missing out on by not going with a refurbished iPad Pro. Best of the best, it's hard to compete with because we've never had a high dynamic range 11-inch iPad before. That's now present with the OLED series, so it's kind of hard to recommend you buy an earlier model because those earlier models are not going to have the same specs. It's just a very difficult justification, because knowing that, okay, if you really need that new iPad Pro, none of your old accessories are going to work. You need a new keyboard, you need a new pencil. Even if you just had a basic smart folio cover, that's not even going to work from previous generation iPads. So please, seriously, make sure that there's something you desperately need on those Pros if you are going through with an order. And don't hesitate to be like, you know what, I spent a lot of money on this and I don't think I'm really utilizing its features, because there's far better uses for your money than a YouTube and email machine, which is kind of what my iPad turned into, and that's why I sold it and I don't have it anymore, and I'm getting by just fine with my phone and my MacBook. Couldn't be happier. Makes traveling a lot easier too. So let's all try to be wise and not get distracted by the latest marketing gimmick. And thank you to everybody supporting this channel directly. Seriously, helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos. So thanks again. This is your Apple Shapiro, and I will see you all in the next one.